Halito, halito, halito. What's happening, beloveds? Hope everything is healthy in Indian country. I have a little conversation. What's happening, everybody? Give it a little second. Salute, Nacho. What's happening, Erwin Nut? Nicole World. Hi, cousin Davida. What's up, beauty? Saved and sanctified. Enough respect, beloved. We let it get in. Get right a little bit. Get right a little bit. Give it a second. Halito Levette, Bilal, Cheryl Davidson. What's up, Malcolm Hardy? Oshio, Toitsu, Wangapo, Sister Celestine. What's up, Mr. Waldo? Country King. Hey, beloved. So, we had a situation with the, I ain't gonna say we, I ain't gonna put y'all in it, but y'all know the same headache. You guys all go through it every once in a while. The Native Americans are very upset that you are American Indian, and they kind of tend to go off the deep end. They wish death and all types of crazy stuff. But they don't represent all Native Americans. These are just the ones online. But I want to just make sure that everybody's clear. So when it comes down to genealogy, you're really going to be able to track down everybody globally, not just your own folks, right? And you know who the neighbors are, who's around, who's listening, who's listed, and you kind of tend to know these things, right? So they have a hard time establishing their identity too. So let me just let you know, a lot of the ones on the internet, they don't have any genealogy whatsoever. They're not even attached to tribes. What's up, Nadi? They're not even attached to tribes. What's up, Cuzzo? There you go, cuz they're not even attached to tribes, a lot of them. And they have some serious hatred. It's real deep with them, and it's no sense in even figuring it out. But they can't tell you where they're from. And I'm going to tell you what, don't even really engage in too many arguments because they weren't in the 13 colonies, especially if they were not there. Where's their history at leading up to that? Never mind federal recognition or not. Where'd they come from? So there's a whole nother slave trade that people don't talk about. They don't speak about often. And they'll ask you, why don't you look like Tonto? Why don't you look like this? Or why don't you look like that? But these are different people, and these are not the same people that were in, the American colonies, the first primary colonies. These are in what you would now call modern day Mexico, South America, Central America, the other Latinized countries. There's a group of people that it was the active slave trade there as well. It wasn't just a transatlantic slave trade or the sub-Saharan slave trade that actually still exists right now. And what I mean by sub-Saharan, they are still actively migrating and kidnapping slaves from South Africa into Libya, actively, and some people are actually going over there to sell themselves and their services to different countries in Europe. That is an absolute fact. The same as it was, you know, 200-300 years ago as well. You got to understand, there's nothing new under the sun. But here it is where you have all these pictures, and I'm just going to use basic facts. I'm not going to pretend to be some sort of archaeologist or anything of the such. But what I'm going to say is this: you have all of these different pictures in antiquity from all of the great scholars from scores of years back. And they have all of the people that depict exactly what we may look like, right? Very different, very unique in scope, specifically because they're not all uniform, right? What I mean by that is if you look at, let's say, hieroglyphics, what people know to be hieroglyphics, there's a light skin, a dark skin, and a super light skinned person, right? They're very uniform. All the men are the same size. Nobody's fat. No one's bald. No one's got a big nose. No one's got a little nose. You know what I'm saying? They just really look very unrealistic. Unlike the pictures in Mexico where men have different sizes and stature, and it just looks completely different. And it kind of represents more of the people that we're familiar with in Visage. I'll just say that. And then there's these pictures that are, that have become what people appear to think that a Native American should look like. And they're partially right in respect by saying that. But a Native American is not always an American Indian, right? And I think we kind of need to talk about that too. But we're going to talk about the trans-Pacific slave trade, very little known, where now you have tons of people from China and Asia, other parts of Asia, okay, that were going to Peru, Chile, and all throughout Spanish America. Now, there are laws in modern day Alabama, right? And I just posted a little piece off of it. And these things give different threads to go and research. And it always comes back to certain things historically. And even in 1963, the article that I posted from December of 1963 made a distinction that there are two different types of Mexicans. They are original Negroes, right? And then there are the non-Negro type of Mexican, right? And even there was a period of time where they were not considered white. And I can show you in the California Constitution right now where it does say that Mexican men are white. And there are several reasons why. But these are some of the things that they will never be able to explain to you. These are some of the things that they'll never answer as they probe and ask you every question in America regarding your ancestry, who you are. And so now, if you notice, we've been chipping at the DNA, right? Because their DNA comes from Siberia, so they're completely disqualified for being First Nations for real. Whether or not that's what they're called, that doesn't prove anything, okay? Because as far as we all know, America has no DNA. And this is what the whole world is, right? And this is where some people that don't have science degrees can challenge the scientists that do have them, right? Because where's the prototype and who are they actually testing over there? But it's not even that deep because it's for entertainment purposes only. DNA is. It's not going to help you establish any relativity. You are not going to find any long lost relative, unfruitful in the village, right? It's not going to happen. That's not absolutely true at all. It couldn't be any more true. They use 0.1% to determine that you 97% of something, right? And it just doesn't make any sense. But here it is. You have the Asians, and they were doing blackbirding up until probably the 1940s. That ended with the coolie trade. Okay, so these are how your people were getting out. They were going bartering for work and essentially signing themselves to be employed in different nations where they have immigrated with an eye and also even taken on indentures. So now you have, and this coolie trade lasted up until the 1940s. They ended up changing the name to blackbirding a little later, but initially this is part of the Trans-Pacific slave trade from the 1500s. China, Japan, all of the primary Asian nations, Malaysia, Cambodia, different nations over there, Philippines, okay, the Filipinos, and they have these ships, these slave ships, and they're called Manila galleons, okay? So even when we're looking at the transatlantic slave database or slavevoyages.org. It also documents the ships that came from different areas, bringing them into Mexico, into Acapulco. Okay. Acapulco and also Mexico City was a hub for the Chinos. In the 1600s, as long as they were uh, uh, going to be agreed to be allies and vassals for the Spanish throne, the Chinos were then granted the same rights as the American Indians, the indigenous people. And
Yeah.
that was the offer that they made. So now these people also included your Moors, a different type of Moor that nobody ever claims to be relative to. The Moors don't have any relativity to any of the Moors, but you have the Lascars, and all different sorts of people. We're going to do a couple of. Are you going to be able to do a screen share at all, Cuzzo?
No. You know, they got she working on the damn computer.
Okay.
She on the computer on the
Yeah.
on the iPad. She working. So
Yeah. So now, so basically, there's no prototype. Again, that's what I'm saying. Ishak, there's no prototype for American DNA at all. And that is completely suspect to me. So there's a now this trans-Pacific slave trade have taken these Chinos, and if they are in the Latin countries, then that wasn't just transferred to Mexico or just exclusive or limited to Mexico as being called the indigenous people, right? As long as they were loyal to the Spanish throne, especially when these are all predominantly Spanish countries, North Mexico, which is still part of North America, and then you have Central and South America, which are primary Latin countries. So that's half your population that also would have entered into Brazil, that they will also just include as millions of Africans, and they still can't, prove that, right? And then there's also another population that's coming from the Pacific into Peru, into Chile, into Colombia. And now those faces are the faces of the nation, but then there's faces that look like us that go specific to the pictures in antiquity that represent those places and represent the places that we are from here, just the same. And now it's completely different. So now you know that these people have all blended in, and they've done it greatly under our noses, but under different regimes and time frames. You had all of this Black Power, you had all of these other distractions and stuff like that, and nobody really took care of America stuff. Everybody, it was like a free for all where everybody just comes and helps themselves to our country, and we were kind of just okay with that. So glad that those days are over, because now we know that we have to take different types of responsibilities and stuff like that to maintain a certain quality of life. And it's not just all about begging somebody for some shit you already got when we don't even know what our civic, social, and community responsibilities are. And with those responsibilities come, being informed of who are the people in your neighborhood. And these people are in our neighborhood, and they really shouldn't be, because there's a very distinct difference. And one thing I'm going to tell you, you don't have to keep arguing with them, because especially if they don't have any history in the 13 colonies, because guess what? You do. You do, right? It's documented. And they do have archivos de indios, right? Because they still call this the Indies. This is also the Indies, and according to the Spanish records, right? Even Virginia and North Carolina, mid-Atlantic region, was still considered the West Indies.
yeah.
And when you look at those records, if you think about it, where they're saying that they're from now, these people were in Mexico. They were not anywhere in no hood that George Washington done ran through. So think about it that way. When you know what your people were doing during the course of time, you know how to insert yourself in a narrative, right? It's different when you say, "Oh, we this and we that," and you're only going to what blanket stories you heard, but you really don't know exactly what it is that your folks were doing. So you tend to include yourself in something that you have no part of, right? And then you take on different things that don't belong to you as well. So this is how we get it together and we get it straight. Go ahead, brother. You can speak on it a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit.
Well, no, no,
You've been reading
you
a book
you
that
on point. I'm gonna start off by saying just And from digging in that book, how Chinos, how Asian Chinos became Indians. Just reading that, it's like we had it hard all over the world. Like people that look like us, that we wind up getting lumped in with the same ones that we're having to like sell them. Like, no, you motherfuckers from over there, don't forget that. They were eager to come over here because in studying us, we forget that over there they have the same kind of caste system. So they were even the other Indians over there, because they call them Indians over there as well. Over there in those islands, Malaysia, the Philippines, Bengal, Bang was it Bangladesh, all over there, Japan. They call them all Indians too, according to the Spanish. So when they started bringing them over here, initially they were bringing them over here to help them conquer us, the Chinos. And what started happening was they were not able to tell the difference. They started not being able to tell the difference in us because a lot of the Chinos said, fuck it, we look like these people, we can blend in, and we see that they leave these people, like they were conquering the cities, but the Indians, the Indios, like James Flame talked about, the ones in the mountains, they didn't fuck with them. They left them alone. Then people paid their little tributes, but they left them alone, and that's where a lot of those Chinos ran off into, to be with those Indians because they left them alone. But a lot of them assimilated into the culture and still adopted the status as Indian. Man, y'all want to see how wild where I'm at? That's a possum right there. Y'all see the possum?
I don't want to. Don't say my friend.
But yeah, man, they were they were initially coming over. So just imagine this: we got the Mongolians coming in from in the 13th century from the coastal lines, and then here come the Spanish bringing in these Chinos. So we in a fucking sandwich. So for people, rationale in their mind, no, they just didn't overpower us. Look what we were fighting on top of infighting. So it was bound for failure. And then the Chinos that they brought in basically just overtook us and became us on paper.
They didn't overtake us.
What?
They didn't overtake us here.
Well, no, in North America, namely Louisiana, because my aunt talks about having Filipino in our family.
Yes, and there is a specific amount of Malays that did come through there from 1760s, from as early 1760s. So they have there's something that they wrote here. Let me read this.
And if they want to catch a lot of the things we're talking about, if y'all go to my page, I have a lot of what Phoenix is talking about. I intentionally did it when she said she was going to do a show on it. So I put up a lot of the material on my page of what Phoenix is talking about.
So this is it just talks a little bit about Denmark being the first country to stop participating in the slave trade, England following in 1807, and the United States in 1808. Holland in 1814, France in 1818, Spain in 1820, and Portugal in 1836. Then the same multinational commercial interests that had operated the trade in Africans turned to Asia for laborers. And from 1840 to 1875, an estimated 138 Chinese men were shipped to Latin America and the Caribbean. So now this also says that these are proponents of this coolie trade claimed willing immigrants were indenturing themselves for a few years, usually between 6 and 8, after which they would be free to settle in the New World or return home. In fact, a few of the laborers from China were voluntary contracts when they existed, were often signed under duress and rarely honored. Chinese saying men were being sold like pigs, referring to the trade as my Ju Jai, the sale of piglets.
Yeah.
So that would be an epithet or probably a hate crime if you said that to one of these Chinos.
Yep. 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 Yep.
So a lot of this happened, but of course, the Chinese did go into Hawaii, but that is more of a Japanese dominated uh, uh, of the Pacific Islands. They were more dominated by the Japanese. But early on, now this only talks about the 1800s, and it'll get into. We'll talk a little bit about the blackbirding, but the coolie trade lasted well into the 1940s. Well
Yep.
into the 1940s. White slavery didn't end until 1910 or 1920s or something like that.
Damn.
So I had another one. Show you a lot of things that's good to look at. So when you're looking at these records, they're going to be in the Mex. They're going to be in Spanish. They're not going to be in English. So you will need a translator if you are looking. There's a lot of records, especially from Texas. Even Texas was a part of Mexico prior to 1830. The 1830s or something like that. So there's Mexican records that are going to be intact, and French archives, certainly if it's Louisiana, Spanish and French archives, and maybe even some Portuguese archives. But I'm going to tell you, depending on how the colony was run at those times, even there are going to be specific laws that weren't assigned to every single place, even within those alleged jurisdictions prior to being statehood, especially pre-colonial. So you'll have to look at whatever throne was available at the time, was operating at the time. So if it's pre-colonial United States, you will look in the British records and see if your family were allies with the British or if they were allies with the so-called Tories, right? That was looking to fight for this territory and to stay here and not pay the tax on the tea, right?
Mm.
Amongst other things. Um, so definitely that's how you'll figure that out. Those French records. And when they talk about Creole, there's different types of Creole, but I know depending on what the colony is, Creole means a descendant of the first Europeans that were there. Look it up. So this is just a little bit on the Trans-Pacific. Let me drop these links in there so you can read some of these books, and you can see for yourself. This is about California, actually. I just got this in there for poops and giggles. These are going to be the slave trade, the Manila Galleon books. Oh, excuse me. Manila Galleon, those are their slave ships. Nothing similar to those pictures or images that they give people regarding what slave ships look like. So let me just
Right.
drop this in here. One of these books is about pre-colonial Los Angeles, I believe. Also, just good for the weed. So let's see. And my favorite, I bust this out a couple years ago. This was a really awesome read, and this is what Prezzo's reading now. Asian Slaves in Colonial Mexico from Chinos to Indians by Tatiana Ciejas. And this is a dope read. Definitely want to catch this book. It's sold on Amazon also. You can look at brief previews here, but it talks about from Chinos to Indians, and it talks about the migration patterns in some of the places that they
Mm-hmm.
went.
Yeah.
Has some firsthand account stories, and it also um, does give you great sources, and these are going to be available through Amazon. I know definitely you can purchase the book A lot of it, you can also download it, I guess, if you have Kindle or something like that. The download's always going to be cheaper. I don't know who has
Yeah.
that. But these are some of the topics, and they really kind of get down to the nitty gritty. This was like a really decent, unbiased read.
Yeah. I mean, it really goes into it. It really gives you an insight on how the
Yes,
Indian tribe, and when you read it, you're going to hear that African story that they sold us. When they say that other Africans were selling us into slavery, no, that's what those Indians were doing.
that's
They were
correct.
doing that to the darker ones. And according to a couple of them sources in there, they didn't even really like African slaves. They said they couldn't do shit
They couldn't
but
do anything.
rowboat. They couldn't do nothing. They didn't have any skill.
That is correct. It does talk about what they did not have.
You get a lot of insight from that book. Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
she gives you the sources. She documents the sources. Like I said, I'm on my second round, and now I'm just digging off of her sources.
You could also, yeah, like I said, even the sources are so qualified that you'll be able to get different threads off of the sources,
Yup.
right? Just and they're really that accessible. A lot of stuff you can also back up on Family Search. You can back up through genealogy and ancestry. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And see what they say about these people. There are documents. There are catalogs of records stored from the 1500s and even beyond that. So definitely check them out. Those are also going to be found, a lot of them, in your card catalogs through Family Search or through Ancestry.
Yeah. And doing them card catalogs, that's how I found out a lot about the Clan Campbells. Just researching from that card catalog. So,
Yes.
y'all have to not just look for a name and a date of the year. You
For
you
now.
have to kind of know, yeah, because I had to look for one of my Texas ancestors. It wasn't Texas like she was saying. So they were born in like 1801. That's not Texas. That's Mexico. And it didn't
Right.
dawn on me until like, hold up. I'm always saying I'm from Mexico. When Texas become Mexico? 1845. So I was like, oh shit, I gotta look for Mexico records now.
That's right. Or
Yeah,
Spanish, rather.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, so now here this says, as a result of the colonial government's new policy on Indian and Muslim slaves, the Manila market shifted to African slaves. The enslavement of Africans and their descendants posed a few legal challenges, so they became more prevalent in all sectors of the economy. These slaves were mainly purchased in Portuguese Macau and brought to Manila by Cantonese merchants who extended their trading activities to Mexico. In 1683, for instance, Don Pedro Quintero Fionillo, a Sangui, sold 2 African slaves to the admiral of the Manila galleon for sale in Mexico. African slaves continued to arrive in Manila for decades to come, but after about 1700, they were no longer channeled into the trans-Pacific slave trade. So here's a whole fold of transportation of African slaves that, you have people that say, gravitate to these slave ideologies. They're not even mentioning, so they don't factor these in. So they did, and this is also proof that you can tell that they don't know what it is that they're talking about, and they don't have the solid history or a timeline for their own people, because this is so vague in scope that it doesn't even make sense how they can insert themselves. It doesn't make sense. And a lot of stuff is not adding up, because here it is a chunk of people that got blamed on the United States and the 13 colonies, and we know that that's not true. But here it is Mexico, and we haven't taken time to study that specific portion of North America and who came through there. So this is a little sneak peek on that, and also a little ether to let them know this is where their allegiance comes from, though, genetically, right? That they don't even know about. And I call them the 750s, the $5, and then the 250 as fake pan fries. Together they 750. So this is what I mean about the sources. This is what we're speaking about in terms of the sources. Let me blow this up a little bit. Um, for analysis of the colony's increased reliance on African slaves, Pascal Girard, the Africans are Philippines, right? And then it has the Roman numerals, what's that, 10, 5, 16, and 17. Okay, so in Negroes, Mulattoes, Zambiagos, Deroteros, Africanos, and Los Mundos Ibercios. Okay, so look, this is going to be your source, and it tells you that this is coming from a school study of Hispanic Americans in Seville. But these are going to be your sources, so these are definitely where you can find them, and that's what's good about them. So this here is dated 1707. Some of these sources, it gives you the page, when it happened, and you get to track these things. So they're talking about they sold a lot of them to different sugar plantations around this time. And um, numerous could be 10. Like we really don't have a number exactly, but the point is that to highlight that there's different entry levels into America that people came, and they had different transitions, and it's not all attached to the picture in everybody's mind of roots and whatever it is that they may be thinking. Let's see. Now, this is somebody that literally came from the Malabar Coast named Antonio. So you can tell at that point they were already corrupted by the Spanish inception or conquest or whatever. And they arrived in Acapulco. And then it tells the ship, you can look this ship up. It existed. It existed. And it talks about a Spanish resident of Cavite in the Philippines had asked the sailor on the ship to take Antonio with them to sell him on his behalf. The sale price was 200 pesos, paid by a slave trader who turned around and sold Antonio in Mexico City for almost double the price. So it has a lot of these things in there as well. And this is the book by Tatiana. I've dropped this before, but I'm going to put it in there again so you guys have it. Oh, did I send that one already? Okay, I got another one to send. Hold on. Okay, so this is another one. I'm going to drop this one too. This is urban slavery in colonial Mexico. Let me drop this in here. All right, so I dropped that in there. Let me just read a little bit from there. A second. So again, it's talking about these specific areas. And this just talks about Chinos and the trans-Pacific slave trade during the period of, let me blow this up so you guys can see. Encomendero influence from 1616 to 1639. Hundreds of Asian captives were also sold on the Puebla slave market. By the early 17th century, Spain had consolidated the Trans-Pacific route, pioneered by Miguel Lopez de Legazpi. In 1565, by way of the Manila galleon trade, the galleons linked the Spanish-American demand for slaves with Asian markets laden with silk, porcelain, and captives of their own. Quite incorrectly assigned the label of Chinos, the majority of these men and women actually come from diverse Asian kingdoms that interacted with Lusophone merchants of Goa, Macau, and Cochin. During the early 17th century, some captives hailed from Malabar and the Bay of Bengal. Others received vague descriptors such as de la India de Portugal, that merely establish an undefined provenance from territories with Portuguese contacts. Many Asians were captured in the regional wars, such as those of the Arakan, or sold into slavery by their parents during periods of extreme drought or famine. Okay, so there's that. This is the etymology of the word Manila, and this is in the Philippines. This is also going to go back to a lot of some of the people that showed up in Louisiana. And Manila, 1690s capital of the Philippines, said to be from Tagalog, May, there is, plus Nila, shrub of the indigo family. But this last element would not be a native word. It gave its name, with altered spelling, of course, to Manila hemp, the original source of Manila paper. So that's the only thing about that. Um, Again, the galleons, you definitely want to check this out. It'll tell you, and you can also cross reference some of these ships. You can definitely do that with slavevoyages.org, and they actually even source that right here. So, 16 Africans arrived, included small numbers of slaves, 1 to 2, labeled as Brand, Mina, Casta, Aurora, Casta, Ozada, Mandinga, and Costa Caffrey. The base of the West Central Africa, as this was a general pattern of traffic in the early to mid 17th century. Still, there was a small minority of recent arrivals from Southwest, Southeast, and West Africa. It is likely that Dutch slave traffic of the late 17th century had little impact on Osaka because most of the Dutch arrivals came from Loango and Bight of Benin. Okay, so this is where a lot of those people went. Let's see, which rarely appear my sample of African arrivals. It is probable that my sample included enslaved disembarked from Portuguese voyages in Veracruz between the 1640s and 1660s. So here are your sources right here. And if you look, it talks about these arrivals here. For the following decades, there are only 3 recorded arrivals: 1681, 1686, and 1705, all under Dutch or French control. That's not a lot of people. That's not a lot of people. Look at those numbers shrinking. Doesn't sound like millions. What about you, cuz? So I'm gonna drop this here about the drop this in here one time for you. Did I just do the same one twice? Oh no, it's from 2 different things. Alright, so hold on 1 second. One second. Now, of course, they had this video I'm gonna show. I mean, it was so boring, so boring. I couldn't even do it. I just couldn't. It was really that lame. Hold on 1 second. But those guys look happy to be there. Let me see. Hold on 1 second. Let me pull this up. Hold on, beloved. Hold on 1 second. It's not very forthcoming in what do you call it? Okay. So they do have this conference right here. I couldn't really sit through it. I don't know if y'all interested about it, but this was definitely a horse of a different color. I really couldn't get past the language barrier. But they are talking about their history here. I'm gonna flash forward a little bit, and they are giving the history of some of this activity. There was a treaty between the Spanish king and the Portuguese king, and normally they are always discussing, and they were taking over to Portugal through the old route, so was not through the Pacific. And so you see, Southeast Asia, it was full of names. When the Europeans came here, there was for a reason, and it is explained here below. There are spices. It was something tangible. This is why they came. Spices was the most profitable trade in the world, and the origin of the spices was in Southeast Asia. And you see this full of names. So there may be some spicy meatballs in there. But there's oh man, I meant to drop that in there. And that's on YouTube. All you gotta do is pretty much put in Trans-Pacific slave trade. There's really not a lot on there. What's up, Top Cats? How you doing, beloved? It's really not a lot there, but definitely you guys check out the people. The genealogy doesn't lie. Everybody's got their place in the world, and a lot of people, especially so-called Black Americans, have forgot their place in it. And this is home. This is grandma's house. We got to clean up. We have really let a lot of people come in and capitalize off of the stories that belong to us. It's time to bring back the cornbread. We definitely gonna bring back the potato salad. You know what I'm talking about? And they don't eat grits. They don't eat grits, right? They don't eat grits. Collard greens does not belong to them. And that's okay. But again, they have their own unique history. But just so you know, stop trying to argue your bloodline with people that were not in the 13 colonies. So whether or not you have found all of your documentation, just know that there is documentation. And their documentation is on your folks in the 13 colonies. So stop, feeling so begrudged by people that don't matter. You know what I'm saying? Let me just say that. Let me just say that. Oh, we got Sister Naughty. What's up, beloved?
Greetings, sis. How are you?
Halito, I'm well. How are you?
Halito.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all
I'm
right.
good. I'm good. Well, his phone died.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, but there's this passage from this book, right? So you can talk. He's here with me, you all.
There. So she's gonna
Okay.
read this little passage to kind of give the people an idea of what was going on and how the conversion happened.
So this is what Asian slaves in colonial Mexico from Chinos to Indian. What's this page? 144. All right, so this is the meaning of indigenous vassalage. Throughout the Spanish Empire, colonized indigenous people were generally called Indians, Indios, in reference to their geographic origin in the eastern and western Indies. More importantly, the world denoted that they were peoples who had been conquered, forced to accept Spanish sovereignty over their land, and made to pay tribute. In return, Indians had a distinct legal and fiscal status as vassals of the Spanish king. In this sense, the natives of the Spanish Philippines had the same rights as the natives of the Americas. This legal categorization, however, was complicated because free natives of the Philippines who immigrated to Mexico were generally called Chinos, which was the same word used for slaves from Asia. Sometimes they were also referred to as Indios Chinos or simply as natives, uh, naturalies. Hmm.
So they base what they were faced, the dilemma they were facing it, and that's immigrated with an E. So they came on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what they were trying to separate them, so they just gave the ones that came on their own, they classified them as the Indians of the land, or like the
Mm-hmm.
Indians of the land, until the ones that got out of bondage started complaining. And then they were just like, well, fuck, y'all are naturals. Y'all are Native Americans as well, because y'all are from the Indies as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it goes into the the problem that the Spanish sovereignty is having with classifying these people. So I know Phoenix dropped that link, so y'all make sure y'all get this book, because I'm pretty sure she don't want us to be up here 3-4 hours with us reading from this book, but we can if she want me to.
No, I definitely want the people to get that. It's definitely interesting. And then also
Yeah.
just probe the records. Again, their archives are archivos de indios, and
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
for the Mexican archives. And they've just had it some, we've been arguing with these people back and forth for the better part of 5 years, right? And up until I probably would say maybe last year or 2018, they usually do it on the have it done by the odd year, the even year. But I would say by 2018, their records kind of were limited to 1895 in most cases. Specifically in those geographical areas. I'll just say that because they were housed in other places such as Spain and such as Portugal and whatever nation may have colonized at the time, or whatever throne may have had control or any type of royalty over those colonies at that time, which those contracts of their vassalage may be attached to.
Mm-hmm.
So that extended into many places. So you're talking about even Spanish nations like Dominican Republic and Cuba as well, right?
Right.
One end of the island of Dominican Republic, even though they're attached to Haiti, and look how cold they are, how divided they are, and they are on the same damn island, the
Mm.
exact same island,
Yeah.
right? So but anyway, and then we know as well, especially particularly in the Caribbean, that they basically bring in outsiders, lookalikes, if you will. And they bring those lookalikes in to come and pretend to be the people, and they end up being the face. They don't pretend after a while, they really end up being the people because they have the political power, and they're really kind of in control of what happens and shit, which is kind of messed up because the indigenous people everywhere end up suffering.
Mm,
So
yeah.
and that's why if everybody's digging in these records, whether they South American, whether they have Mexican ancestry or whatever, I don't care if you're Mongolian, Russian, or whatever it is, Polish, you definitely need to find out so that this way you're able to know what your story is. And you don't have to, because what happens is you don't have to steal anybody else's story because yours is going to be quite unique in its own. right? And then you have that commonality with other people that share the same ancestry as you and the same situations, just by default, such as being from the exact same places or descending from the same tribes or what have you. But in that regard, it's best that everybody know where everybody coming from. So this way, we don't end up joining allegiance with suckers and shit like that. Because we got a mission, right? There's something very unique. We're not gonna have all the support it is that we need until we actually get some shit done. Because as it stands right now, we've been under umbrellas of unsuccessful people that have, not really taken the time to look into the history and actually see where it is that we insert ourselves, and where we shouldn't. So now, as they call us all these other things and they give us somebody else's culture, that means somebody else gets to walk away with our shit. And I'm not really cool with that at all. So that's pretty much the end of that. I ain't really want to stay too long. Thanks so much, cousins, for coming through.
No problem. No
I think
problem.
you just drop that. You got those books. There's some more in there. I might do another little part two. Maybe we got update and show some more. I got some good screenshots too from the book that gives you the different excerpts of certain situations and firsthand account stories of things that happen. When you see how the nuns were really in charge of a lot of things, the Catholic nuns, which
Yep.
is really predominant. And also, Islam was very predominant in Mexico. A lot of people are unaware of, but these are also your Sephardic Jews and people that have also been remnants that get kicked out of other places, such as the Moors and things like that. You can guarantee that those would be included, as they also speak of the Lascars, Turks, and the like.
Yep.
So keep in mind, everybody has to have some sort of relativity before they start saying what it is that they saying when they say what they say. You know what
Right.
I'm talking about?
And just one more thing before you go. I'm gonna read this little insert. So this book is so interesting. It said in Mexico, the indigenous majority belonged to the Republic of Indians. So this
Mm,
this was the people that was here. Us, we was here. It says Spaniards, free people of mixed descent, and all slaves belong to the Republic of Spaniards. Right under this schism, free natives of Spanish Philippines belong to the Republic of Indians, whether they lived in their town of birth or elsewhere in the empire. So they just started saying that they were us.
that's right.
They just started
Here we
saying,
go.
like, okay, you're
This
free,
moment
you're a
from my
Chino, you're an Indian.
book. That's it. That's it. Well, still, as they got to keep their allegiance to the Spanish throne
To the
and
Spanish.
whatever spoils may have come with that.
Yep, yep. So y'all dig on these books, man. Them links that she dropped, y'all dig because you will start seeing the whole picture unfold. And also you will have some ammunition to bust these Mongolians upside their head with and Chinos
That's right.
upside their head with.
And then not only that, for the people of Texas, which is going to be our next stop,
Yep.
Oklahoma and all of those areas that once were something else, you definitely want to look into the antiquity of Texas. If you know
Mm.
that you go back to uh, pre-colonial, I won't even say pre-colonial. If you can go before 1840s, then that's something that you kind of have to do in order to follow your trail, to
Yep.
maintain that trail. So definitely you guys want to keep that in mind as well. But that's that. That's that.
All right, cuzzo, man. Y'all have a good evening, you all. Stay safe out there.
Yes, indeed. And we'll see y'all soon. Tomorrow I want to come through. I'm gonna talk about propaganda, public law, 80, I think it's 204. And we're going to talk about the Smith-Mundt Act and propaganda and how they positioned themselves to be able to put all of this stuff in the media, and how it was going to be spread for whatever image that they were looking to portray in regards to the United States, which wasn't totally representative of the people, right? And we'll get into that and we'll talk about how it was repealed, and how we can follow up on that and some of the things that we need to have enacted so that we are not so bothered by and injured by some of the things that they actually do put in the media. So that's what I'll be talking about tomorrow. I'll show you guys where to find the laws at. You already know what it is. Everything is healthy. Everything's good in Indian country. Keep it that way. Love.